It was as if all that accumulated tension yearned for a resolution, an answer. And without thinking, I let my hand gently brush against his, as if it were a silent signal that everything was okay to proceed. He paused for a moment, as if he grasped the message, and then he drew even closer. The warmth of his body seemed to envelop mine, and I felt my heart racing in a way I had never experienced before. "Robert," I said in a tone I could barely recognize as my own. After that, words ceased. The silence was filled only with gestures, touches, and the harmony with which our bodies seemed to move. My life changed drastically the night my father, by mistake, entered the wrong room and lay down beside me, believing I was my mother. It was a moment that began strangely and took a direction I could never have imagined. To help you understand, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Mara. I'm 22 years old, and I still live with my parents, Robert, 52, and Emily, 49. Our house is modest, but steeped in routine. My parents have the kind of traditional marriage where weekends are sacred, dedicated to sitting together, opening a bottle, and talking about everything and nothing at the same time. That night, however, everything was different. Maybe it's not like that in your home, but in mine, weekends always unfolded in the same way. My father and mother sitting on the couch, glasses in hand, laughing at nothing. It was like a ritual for them after a grueling week of work. When Saturday arrived, it seemed the world could end as long as there was a drink and laughter. It felt amusing and somewhat predictable. I knew that, in the end, my mother would head to her room in high spirits, while my father would wander the hallways. For me, it all boiled down to routine. I observed them from a distance, chuckled a bit, and returned to my life with my phone or computer. Over time, I started paying closer attention to his behavior, perhaps because I noticed how much more talkative my father became after a few drinks. He wasn't the type to drink daily, but when he did, he talked more than necessary. My mother found it endearing, while I, to be honest, found it intriguing. He seemed to transform into a different person for a few hours. One of those nights was different. It happened last Saturday. They were in the living room as usual, but my father seemed more animated than normal, speaking loudly, recounting stories from his days as a single man, while my mother just laughed. I was in the kitchen making a sandwich, but I couldn't help overhearing everything he said. He said things like, "Oh, I was the man. Emily, you won me over because you knew how to drive me wild. You laughed at my jokes, even when you weren't sure if they were funny or embarrassing." After dinner, I went to my room and locked the door. You know that feeling when something different is about to happen. I can't explain it, but that's how I felt. Maybe it was because my father was louder than usual, or because, for the first time, I really paid attention to how he acted. The thought kept circling in my mind as I tried to distract myself with videos. I started wondering if my parents had always been so open when I was younger. Suddenly, I felt like I was discovering a side of my father I had never noticed before. I always saw him as a serious, methodical man, but with a glass in his hand, he became someone else. That night, I felt a strange curiosity to understand that side of him better. Before going to bed, I heard my mother say she was heading to her room. My father stayed in the living room, lost between the television and the bottle. I turned off the light, but I couldn't sleep. I thought about how those moments reveal parts of life we tend to overlook. It was a fleeting, almost random thought, but it would become significant later, because that night wouldn't be just any Saturday. Silence began to settle over the house. The only sound was his heavy footsteps in the hallway. Then, something made me pause. I don't know why, but I had the sense that something different was about to happen. Suddenly, the door to my room creaked open slowly. I found it odd. No one enters without knocking. When I looked, it was my father, with a dazed expression, clutching the door as if searching for his way. For a moment, I considered asking what he wanted, but I hesitated. He took a step forward and said in a shaky voice, "Emily, I'm here." At that moment, my heart raced. He genuinely thought he was in my mother's room. My first instinct was to tell him he was in the wrong place, but something held me back. I stayed silent, just watching as he sat on the edge of the bed, confused. I didn't understand what was happening. He sat beside me and sighed, as if ready to sleep. I remained still, trying to make sense of it all. My heart was pounding, and at the same time, I felt a peculiar curiosity. I wondered what would happen if I didn't say anything and let him believe I was my mother. It wasn't out of malice, but to see how he would react. So, instead of correcting his mistake, I decided to play along. "Robert," I said, mimicking my mother's soft tone. He turned to me, eyes half closed, trying to see in the dark. "Emily," he asked, exhausted. "It's me, love," I replied in the most convincing voice I could muster. He sighed, relaxing further. He was so out of it that he didn't notice anything odd. He reached for my hand, but I subtly pulled away, laughing internally. He mumbled something about how tiring his day had been and how he just wanted to rest. I seized the chance to start a conversation. "Did you work hard today? You deserve a break." He smiled without opening his eyes, nodding. It was strange, but I enjoyed seeing him so at ease. I knew I shouldn't, but there was something intriguing about the game. It was like I was performing in an improvised play, my role being to deceive my father without him realizing. I felt in control, like I could stop at any moment, but I didn't want to. "Are you tired tonight, love?" I asked sweetly. "A little, but with you here, I can relax," he replied, catching me off guard. He didn't suspect a thing. I smiled and decided to push a bit further. "You deserve it. You work so hard, and I don't think you ever truly unwind." I lightly ran my hand along his arm. He noticed and reacted. "Yeah, you're right. You always know what I need. The atmosphere in the room shifted. It was a risky game, but I still felt in control. I didn't want to stop. He murmured my name again, turning his face toward me, as if he wanted to say something more. I leaned in slightly. I traced my fingers over the sheet, pretending to draw something. He reached out to take my hand, but hesitated. "Hey, it's okay, Robert," I said, almost in a whisper. "Don't worry, I'll take care of you." And so the game continued. I was enjoying myself, toying with the situation. I felt like I was dictating every line, every gesture, while he followed the script unknowingly. But something began to change. The tension of the moment sparked something I didn't know existed. His touch on my arm and shoulder grew more deliberate. My breathing quickened. "Emily, you seem so different tonight," he murmured, almost in a whisper. I should have stopped there. I knew it. But I chose to let go. Once again, I let my hand touch his. He took it as a sign. He moved closer. The warmth of his body enveloped mine. I felt my heart racing. "Robert," I said in that unfamiliar tone. There were no more words, just caresses, gestures, and a strange harmony. It was as if the world had stopped. I knew this would change everything. But in that moment, I couldn't think of anything beyond the warmth, the closeness, and the sensation of crossing a line with no return. When it all calmed down, I lay beside him, listening to his steady breathing, as the weight of what had happened began to settle in my mind. I was confused, flooded with thoughts and feelings I couldn't untangle. But I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would be the same after that night.